Good evening, friends. In this series of GPETS, that is geopolitical, economic, technological, social environment, today let's do end of the August wrap up 23. We have just finished the BRICS, that is now BRICS Plus summit in Johannesburg, South Africa. We've had a very successful launch of Chandrayaan 3 and its robot Pragyan from the Vikram lander. G20 is coming up next week. B20, the business segment of it, have been held last week, and a number of points have got raised. Statements by Prime Minister, statements by Foreign Minister, and some other people in technology, like Sam Altman, the OpenAI founder. G20 also we have to understand, many people don't even know which are the countries in it. G7 we do know, which is basically a club of the USA, Europeans, and Japan. And it was the limited thinking available there that led to formation of G20. There is also an organization since the 1950s of G77, which is of the developing countries, and plus China, which did not become a member but attends it, but that has been low-key for quite some time. There are regional associations like SAARC, Quad, which is a military plus scientific collection of USA, India, Australia, and Japan. There is the Indian Ocean Rings Conference, which India has supported. For the last 6 years, they've been having a summit. There are various Pacific-related organizations which either US has promoted or India has promoted. So let's see, in a very broad sense, whether the time has come for India for an inflection point to go in a different direction, non-linear. Let's go to the past first. If we go 2,000 years ago, India was the leading economic power in the world, bracketed with China. Records are there, but they are not very, very solid. India was ahead in the technology of the day for making swords or making plows or making vehicles which moved, bullock carts or camel carts or so on, making iron nails, so on, making iron, making steel, many technologies. And remained so for 1,000 years thereafter, till there is a point of inflection of 1757 with the Battle of Plassey, and then 1857 definitely with UK Crown taking over the management of India. But 1757 is the inflection point where China also starts declining, starts getting colonized, and European powers start intruding in the trade, in shipping, in shipbuilding, and they start going ahead in the technology till the Industrial Revolution, where UK takes a lead. And with that, the colonies like India, the African colonies, the South African colonies, Caribbean, so on, become the colonies to feed raw materials and agriculture commodities to the colonial powers, led by UK, but they used to fight also with each other, France, Germany, Belgium, Italy, and so on. So this period of about 200 years, coming up to, let's say, 1947, when India gets freedom, and 1949, when China becomes the People's Republic of China, and then the African countries start getting freedom and all that till the 60s, some even till the 1980s. That there is a massive exploitation of the raw material resources from the colonies and supplying back the goods of the Industrial Revolution. So cotton goes, cloth comes, raw silk goes, and silk scarves come, and all the luxury goods relating to porcelain and silk and so on go from India and China and become part of the trade in Europe. And the European cities, wherever these ships are plying, start becoming richer and richer and richer. India and China starts becoming poorer and poorer and poorer. And Africa, of course, on one hand, the slave trade, so all the young, energetic manpower is taken away. And on the other hand, total exploitation, 100% exploitation of the raw materials, including the precious things like gold and diamonds and silver, etc., from the South America. So then it is the century of the colonial powers led by UK till the Second World War, when, because of their fight with each other, they decimate each other, and USA becomes the dominant economic and military power. And on the other hand, it is Russia, which becomes Soviet Union, which has these other peripheral states called Eastern Europe, and also part of the Eastern, almost full of Eurasia, becomes their Soviet Union, and there is a competition between the two powers. They spend a lot of money on military, they spend a lot of money on space and technology as competition. Of course, USA itself is bigger. UK starts going down, dollar starts becoming stronger, pound gets almost replaced, and then later on the euro dollar will come. The technology-wise, USA expands quite a lot. It gets talent from all over the world, so also Europe, and their scientific laboratories for pharmaceuticals and automobiles and electronics and so on are the best in the world, and they have a technology-driven growth. In this process, India and China are burdened with very large populations, undereducated, uneducated, with poor health programs and so on. So first 10-15 years go into providing some basic infrastructure for general life of the country. And at the same time, when Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru is the Prime Minister, there is a strong movement, which is scientific movement, setting up labs, setting up ISRO, Atomic Energy Commission, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, aeronautical labs, chemical labs, and so on and so forth. So a lot of these labs are there, but they are not industry-oriented. The linkages are weak. And so they do their work, but these are not industry-led labs. Money is of the government, right? But a basic infrastructure starts getting formed of the education, which later on will expand quite a bit towards the later part of the 20th century and early part of this 21st century. It is this educated manpower which therefore sets up the ITS and goes abroad and becomes important in various technology companies throughout the world, heading major companies like Google and Microsoft and you name it. So by 1947, or let's say 1950 when we became republic, India and China are quite low in terms of per capita incomes. Later on, China will have a program of 2 children per family and then to 1 child per family, which now is beginning to hurt them because their population is beginning to decline and is beginning to age. While in India, 2-child policy is adopted, partially successful or not, but India's population keeps on increasing. It is still above 2, that means replacement ratio, and it has now hit 1.4 billion or so, and slightly therefore ahead of China. While in the next 30 years, and if you go up to the end of the century, the China's population will keep on reducing. By the end of the century, it will be about 700 million people. Of course, that worries them because even by 2030, their population average age will be 57. Similarly, in Japan, it will be of that order. So the populations are becoming older and older. Issues are therefore becoming different. how can smaller group of younger people support larger number of senior people, either by paying taxes to the social security or otherwise? And now coming back to India, that India slowly now starts becoming important, first as the leader of the global north. It is not something who is going to give a medal for it, but the manner in which India argues for the others. But India is not even a member of the UN Security Council, so its voice is actually not powerful at all. And in the other organizations, India is still seen as a poor country, which has to take arms from the West and so on. And some of them in the Western world, the media is not even believing Chandrayaan has happened. Pakistan also, a lot of people are there who think these are fake photographs. And same ludicrous cartoons come, let's say, in New York Times, where there are two fat men sitting and there is somebody very thin with a cow knocking at the door to get an entry in this elite club. So those are the kinds of images which still exist. But the reality is that India has perhaps the largest scientific manpower, technological manpower in the world. Our manufacturing is not that strong. Percentages can be talked about. And China's manufacturing has become quite strong. India is stronger, getting stronger in the services. And in the social services, education or medical or so on, India has a scope where the outside countries look at you and want to also come and partake of the knowledge. Now, one of the big problems of India is the manner in which the IMF does the calculations of GDP, then divided by the currency exchange rate, like 80, in our case 280 in case of Pakistan, and then that GDP starts looking very small. And when you divide it by large population, it is ludicrously small. But this has got embedded in the thinking of the people. The IMF has done it and therefore it must be right. So one correction which has to be made is that purchase power parity has to be there. Till now, even those statistics are made by the IMF, and one is not sure. We'll give you a very simple example that a haircut in India may cost 100 rupees and it costs $50 in the USA or UAE. So now 100 rupees or let's say 80 rupees, and 80 rupees if you divide by the exchange rate is $1. So it's $1 here and it is $20 to $50 there. It's the same thing. It's the same service. So it gets undercounted. And these are billions of haircuts in a year, right? Similarly, the work of the housewives is not monetized. How many millions, hundreds of millions housewives work, and that work is not monetized. If that had to be monetized both in India and USA, why should it be monetized at $1 a day here, that is 80 rupees, and $80 a day there, according to the minimum age? Then the ratio is 1:80. So our GDP is only added by $1 multiplied by 100 million housewives, and that one is $80 multiplied by 100 million. See the difference? Okay. Now let me therefore come to this point that there is a lot of thinking and books which have been written, especially Mr. Mehbubani from National University of Singapore, who is a former foreign secretary and representative to UN of Singapore, has written about Asian century. Now that book has been discussed quite a bit. So basic thrust of that argument is that 21st century is going to be the Asian century. There is another stream of thought which says this century is going to be of China. And there is a third stream of thought that India will be the India century. And it is not so much question of linear exploration, but it is in terms of what the capability of the system are and how they are growing and how younger population will be there. So once again, like it used to be talked earlier in the 50s and 60s, that India's population is a great burden. And then people started talking about India, its population is a human resource. And our human resource did not find sufficient jobs in India, so they went abroad. But they were Indians. And they sent money home, whether it was from Middle East or it was from US or it was from the rest of Europe, etc. So that manpower is there and it also repatriates money. It becomes your dollar income of the country, that is, and you can buy things with it and so on. But the other thought is that the European rate of growth has become near zero. US rate of growth is about zero. Japan is about zero, or you can say 0 to 1%. Okay, while China has, after growing at more than 10%, has declined to uh, about 4%. While India slowly growing up, touching almost 10%, and then COVID came, and then declining, and then started rising again. It's about 7% now. So if India grows between 7 to 10%, obviously next level will be obtained. So now, what is the recent thing? Mr. Goyal in this B20 meeting has said that India will soon be a 5 trillion economy, dollars that is. So now some people laugh about it, and some people can critically analyze it. But it's not a linear progression, because we have $3.5 trillion or something like that. But that $3.5 trillion, which looks big today to us, per capita incomes are very small. So now let's come to the BRICS. BRICS summary is that therefore six countries have been added more to Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And they have said that we will do more and more trade, mutual currency. The expansion is Egypt, Ethiopia, from Africa, Argentina, from South Africa, number 2 largest country after Brazil, and then you have UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Iran. Now, if you want to look at positive way, this is a very, very good combination. Different people, strengths from different parts of the world. And the negative way, which West is looking at it, that this will not be stable, this will not stabilize. India and China will keep on fighting. How will they come together? Argentina has a lot of inflation, etc., etc. But one thing is certain. They have decided about mutual currency trades. Therefore, their reliance on the dollar will go down. If your demand for the dollar is less, the price of the dollar will go down, not appreciate. When the price of the dollar goes down, obviously your GDP start looking better. Okay. Now let's come to the G20. As I said, this expansion of G7. G7 is a very small elite club on a similar wavelength in terms of incomes, technology, thinking, democracy, and so on, while G20 is somewhat larger, and UN, of course, becomes very large to handle any decision making. So that's why these smaller groupings have developed.